do we simplify detach versus when do we remain faithful to commitments we have taken on?
Simplify what?
Um, do we simplify detach? Sorry.
Detach.
Yeah, how much do we simplify or detach versus when do we remain faithful to commitments we have taken on? So a personal example is being a mother is pretty full on. I often find that I get annoyed with our dogs, Muni and Rishi, as they are waking the baby, jumping on her, adding more disturbance than I'm able to deal with at the moment. Is this a perfect opportunity to practice patience and learn to open my heart and show affection during difficult times, or do I simplify external circumstances? Or would this be running away from suffering, which is inevitable? Same goes with making effort to maintain friendships, etc. How much do I extend myself to practice showing love and affection during a time when I'm feeling stretched? Let me know if I need to clarify the question.
Well, I'm not entirely clear, but I'll try to answer. But I think the how much in these instances is a self-determination, um, and um, and if you find that it's helpful to look at stressful, as you described in them, circumstances that arise as opportunities to develop patience and so forth. If that works well for you, and you find that you can do that, and it does foster patience, uh, kindness, whatever may be the case, then obviously it's useful. If if you find it difficult to do that, or trying to do that is counterproductive. It's kind of a question of your own state and realization. There's a higher ideal that we could embrace, try to embrace, but it may not be something that we can embrace at all times. That's why, for example, I've said many times that while patience is a virtue and tolerance is certainly called upon by Mahaprabhu, we're called upon to be tolerant, we're also encouraged to find a favorable situation for our practice. And therefore, we may not tolerate certain circumstances and change them for that our practice may flourish. So, I can't give you a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you do this? How much do you not? It's kind of personal, but you have to look, such at such questions in terms of the result that will be derived. If it's kind of a forced thing that I should be doing this, I should see everyone as, for example, I should see everyone as my friend, because even though they appear as enemies, they're actually taking away causing my karma to expire. Well, that's all sounds well and good, and it may be true, but it may be hard to live like that. And trying to live like that maybe when you're not able to in terms of realization, it may be counterproductive, and then you may lose interest in the practice altogether. So that's the main thing that you have to keep in mind. You want to keep the practice, keep your enthusiasm for the practice, and embrace it, as best you can, with progressively, but in full consideration of your limitations and so forth. I think there's something to be said for kind of a Western mentality of wanting instant gratification transferred into instant spirituality that sometimes causes devotees to try to embrace practices and mindsets and so forth that are beyond their adhikar, their eligibility to do successfully and advance thereby. But well, you can say they tried and they're better off for it. That's one way to look at it. But from like maybe an Eastern point of view, someone who's brought up within Hinduism and so forth, they can kind of hear these higher ideals identify with them without trying to put them in place artificially. There's something to be said for both. They may be too slow. We may be too fast, and if you're fast, you may slip. That's true. But then nothing ventured, nothing gained, they say. So, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So that, there are different ways to look at it. I think we answered the question, maybe not similar, but the brought up verse I'm going to cite from the Bhagavatam of Narada, the story of Narada, and how he suggested, make a try for this, and if you don't succeed, apparently, well, you have succeeded because you're that much further down the road, in as much as whatever progress you've made in bhakti, that's permanent. So different ways to look at those kinds of issues in your personal life. You talked about friends. What was that part about friends?
That part was like to putting effort into maintaining friendships when you have, when you're feeling stretched and have a lot to do as a mother.
Well, then I wouldn't put much effort into it. And if people can't understand that, then they're not very friendly. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. So you're talking about the circumstances. Okay, it's more clear now, where your living situation has changed considerably with a young baby and so forth. It takes a lot of she takes a lot of attention and so on, and I think you have to give full emphasis to that. That's your immediate motherly concern, and I think you can get mad at your dogs if they get in the way, and I think that's a problem. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Those circumstances will change too, and I'm sure your friends will be waiting for you when you on the other side, if you will. I hope it helps. It's just some kind of granny wisdom, if you will. I don't know if it's not. I'm really quoting the Bhagavad Gita here, but a little bit. Go ahead. What else?
We say thank you very much. Then we have Beatrice from Colombia.
And she says, obeisances, Guru Maharaj. I am Beatrice Johanna, an aspiring devotee. I attend spiritual awakening classes with the devotee Nam Bhajan in Medellin, Colombia. I'm a single mother. My daughter is 7 years old. I'm interested in bringing her closer and first bringing myself closer to Sri Krishna. I long for his friendship. For 3 months now, I have been chanting the holy name and praying to the divine. I wish to learn how to develop the qualities necessary for this beautiful practice. This is important because my daughter listens to me. So how can I avoid falling into prayers that are too ordinary? How should I address him in a dignified way, improving each day? Radhe Radhe. Thank you very much, and may you have very good health.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. I think that any prayers are good, because they're an expression of our dependence on Bhagavan, even if we pray for material things, which is, of course, not the standard of the path of pure devotion. But that said, there are different ways to think about prayers, and dependent on one's stage of practice, then the focus may be different. So for example, in the stage of sadhana or spiritual practice, which would be the stage of most devotees, then prayers are more directed towards increasing one's faith, the outer expression of which would be surrender, Sharanagati, praying for the ability to, give oneself entirely, to weep because one cannot weep when chanting, asking for strength to overcome anarthas, and obstacles on the path, and so forth. Culturing a kind of dependence like this, which is central to Sharanagati, which means like surrender. And if one, by contrast, is in a higher stage of bhakti and bhava, spiritual emotion or bhakti proper, then one's hearing, one's chanting, one's prayers are arising out of spiritual emotion. And so that in that stage, then prayers will be more emotional or with regard to spiritual emotion and its culture. By that I mean, bhakti rasa, it's per se, bhakti rasa proper. So, it's one thing to pray, like I'm saying, in this latter stage for the attainment of the ideal, the clear idea of the ideal, the attainment, and it's another thing to pray for the necessity of putting things in place that I might, by which, through practice, I would be more qualified to yearn for that ideal. I've given an example before. Let's say you want to go to a foreign country. Let's say you want to go to India. Well, you could yearn to go to India, but if you don't take the practical steps to get a passport and a visa and the money and so forth, you're kind of wasting your time. And so sadhana bhakti is more about putting things in place. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to say, first deserve, then desire. So first, get your passport, get your visa, get everything straightened out, and then your longing, is going to make sense. Now, that said, obviously there's some overlapping between sadhana and bhava in terms of longing to attain Krishna as a friend, for example, as you're speaking about it, and appealing to Krishna for strength to control your mind and control your senses, and so on and so forth. Again, the point is that if you do control your mind and your senses, then you control your emotions, and then you have opportunity for spiritual emotions to arise. So again, it kind of depends on our progress. If you're a beginning devotee, so I would encourage you to pray for the strength for the practice, for understanding of what it means to be a friend of Krishna, that you could have greater standing in the tattva, in the underlying philosophy out of which that friendship or love of Krishna arises. And now that said, there are examples of prayers on both ends of the spectrum. And that's also a very dignified way to pray, to recite the prayers of others. Prayers of Bhakti Vinod. You can find him praying for Sharanagati. He has a dozen or more songs correspond with the different limbs of Sharanagati, which are to accept what's favorable for Bhakti, to reject what's unfavorable. So we can learn to pray for the power to accept what's favorable for Bhakti and to reject what's unfavorable, for example. How to become dependent upon Krishna, another feature of Sharanagati. How to think of Krishna only as one's protector and so forth. Humility and self-resignation. These are the angas or limbs of Sharanagati. So it would be very useful to look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prayers as songs. You can learn, sing. And there's some overlapping in there also in his songs in terms of the two divisions that I spoke of. On the higher end of things, I wrote a book titled circle of friends. And there's some longing in there. Even I've expressed some longing in there, inspired by certain passages and leelas and so forth. So that would be a good book to read and to notice those sections. There are sections in texts like that where authors reveal their own feelings and their prayerful dispositions. So that's very we're blessed to receive those insights, those feelings, to hear about them, and we can try to make them part of our life and so forth. So there's little room for both sides of the spectrum, even as beginning devotees, even as sadhakas. But the main focus, again, in the stage of sadhana, is to develop the spiritual strength and to overcome obstacles, to depend on Krishna, so on. So that said, there's a slight for personal prayers. There's a formula that is useful, and that is that we first glorify Krishna. For example, say, Krishna, you are the supreme being, the source of everything, and at the same time, you become the friend of Sri Ram and Subal, and the lover of Radha, the son of Yashoda. Then, in its way, you've shown that despite the fact that you're the source of everything, you're controlled by bhakti. I, on the other hand, is the second part of the prayer after glorifying him, and a lowly person who has only come to know about you through sadhu sangha, through the grace of Nam Bhajan Das and others, and I have no qualification on my own, but I make, as is the third part, an appeal. So we glorify Krishna, state his position, state our own position, then we make an appeal. And my appeal is that you please give me the understanding by which I can make progress towards you, as you say, for example, you do for those who love you in Bhagavad Gita. You say, Tesham satata yuktanam vachitam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayantite, from the 10th chapter. The first verse I learned for the Bhagavad Gita. And the whole of what constitutes practice, the way, the path, is found there. Try to love Krishna sincerely. And from within, it says, he'll give you the wisdom to come to him, how to come to him. So you pray for that wisdom. So you show me that wisdom. Even though I cannot love you, I'm lacking in my love for you. Please give me the wisdom that I may learn to love you. So something like that. That's what I would suggest. I hope that is helpful. Bhagavan Sri Krishna Ki Jai.
Jai, thank you. This question is from Amrita Radhe as a comment from last Sunday call.
Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances to Srila Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for arranging such podcasts week after week. I have heard about Lord Chaitanya's devotee Kalidas, who would eat every devotee's leftover prasadam. He wouldn't even consider a devotee's advancement level. Personally, I find it difficult to accept leftover maha-prasadam, even of advanced devotees. Could you please comment on what principle is being taught through this pastime and what I can do to get over my mental block? Thank you.
Well, Kalidas had great faith in maha-prasadam. What can I say? I have some experience of this in my youth in New Dwarka, as Prabhupada named his temple in Los Angeles. There was a competition that was started by one of my godbrothers was organizing the book distribution, and whoever distributed the most books in the week would win the maha-prasadam of the deity. And so I won. And then I won again, and then I was winning every week. And then he changed the composition to a daily basis. And then I won every day. So every day I would get the plate of Radha and Krishna. And I was thinking at the time that I get strength from this. Krishna's given me the power. So I would go out to distribute books in the morning in the neighborhood, and I would return for the lunch. And I was thinking that I was dependent upon that maha-prasadam to have the strength to continue the service. Then I would go back out in the afternoon. So I was very protective of the plate, and I ate every bit. But after a while, this went on for some time. Somehow my thought pattern just changed by the power of maha-prasadam. And I thought, just see, I found myself thinking, what kind of devotee are you that Krishna's giving this maha-prasadam and you're keeping it all to yourself? You should be distributing this maha-prasadam to others. So that's what I did. Then I came home, I got the plate, then I would distribute it to everybody. And then I waited until they all finished. And then I would go and collect the remnants of whatever was left, whatever had fallen on the grass, because we used to eat outside sometimes from the temple and so forth. And I would scrape together a meal like that. And then I had even more power. So somehow or other, I had faith in maha-prasadam. And I personally experienced the virtues and the power of that. So I want to say to you that there is great power in maha-prasadam from my own experience. And if you believe me, you can try it and see. But for me, like I say, it came naturally out of regard in a particular way for the maha-prasadam. And maha-prasadam then took me in another direction, further into the mysteries of that mercy of Krishna. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, this is a story about maha-prasadam, told that when he was young and had joined the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there was a festival and he was put in charge of distributing halava. He was at the, people would come with a plate and then distribute. And one man came, he gave halava. And then he saw the man coming again a second time. But oh, he's come back for a second time, so he gave him a second time. Okay. Then the man came back for a third time. And then Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj hesitated. And then but an older godbrother said, are you distributing food or are you distributing prasadam? Mercy. If someone keeps coming back for mercy, can you say, you've asked for too much mercy? You don't deserve any more mercy. No, you can't. So that he gave the third time and so forth. So that's a nice story about maha-prasadam. Prabhupada was very fond of distributing prasadam. And ISKCON was very interested in the early days. When I remember it was a very big feature. I don't know what this situation is like now, but in the beginning, of course, the early days when I joined, we would get breakfast. We would get a wax paper plate, and they would put some oatmeal, a little bit of yogurt, a couple of pieces of orange, ate chickpeas and a piece of ginger. And that was the breakfast. And the oatmeal was warm, so you had to eat it before it melted the wax paper plate. We didn't have the money to buy plates and so forth. But then they would come around with the maha-prasadam, And so the diet, what I want to say is, was a little bit austere, and the maha-prasadam was quite tasty. So we all were very excited to get just a small portion of the maha-prasadam. So it has great power. The story is there. What is my story? You're referencing the life of Kalidas, and I think that we should take the example of great devotees, and put your faith in maha-prasadam. That's my answer. Hope it helps.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Then we have our dear Braj Sundari.
Oh, there's a follow-up.
There's a follow-up, sorry, from Krishna Kanaya.
So she says, I have a follow-up to this glorious prasadam pastime. Jai Srila Guru Maharaj, that is so amazing. I have a question. Were some other devotees jealous of you because you won the Maha plate day after day? If yes, how did you deal with that internally? Is this spiritual envy actually good? Or let's say, in another example, that you, Guru Maharaj, praise a disciple of yours and other disciples feel envy towards them because of that. Is that allowed? Is that even beneficial to our spiritual life? I once heard that there is no remedy against jealousy. Yes, there is spiritual competition, but jealousy doesn't sit well in my heart. Thank you so much for enlightening us and sharing such amazing stories.
Well, jealousy or envy is very unbecoming for a devotee. To mention at the outset of the Bhagavatam, Dharma projitakaita botra, nirmat saranam sadam. So, as I say, it's particularly unbecoming on a devotee who is the recipient of grace and mercy. Pujapachita Maharaj gave another example that if you were waiting in line for mercy, and the person calls you ahead, you come to the front, and then another person thinks, why is he allowed to go to the front? Then he's no longer waiting in line for mercy. He's seeking justice. So do you want justice or do you want mercy is the question, right? We want mercy. If we went away in terms of justice, then we have no position, really. So envy or jealousy is unbecoming, and particularly for a devotee. But on the higher side, there's we see jealousy in and envy in the Leela, in Madhurya Leelas, in particular. That is another thing. The intrigue that is woven into the fabric of Parakiya Bhav, the nature of the romantic relationship of Radha and Krishna, we call it Parakiya. The intrigue and all of that, the secrecy, the hiding, the secret meetings, and so forth, and the competitions and so forth, are central to that. And because of that, the commentators on Ujjval Nilamani, a book where that is brought out, have said that this Madhurya Rasa, were to personify it, would be a Narmasaka who was involved in all the intrigues and so forth. So anyway, there's a place for spiritual envy, but that's not in the stage of sadhana. So There's no place for that. Now, particularly, yes, there was one fellow that was jealous of me, and he had been winning the plate previously before I got involved, I guess, and he was quite jealous, so then he used to get a welfare check, and he would keep it for himself, and then he would buy a bunch of books and pretend that he had sold them, so that he couldn't win. It was unfortunate. So how did I feel about him? I felt it was I felt bad for him. I felt, geez, it's sad that he could think like that. I never wished him any ill or anything like that, but I felt kind of sorry for him, actually. So I don't know. Anyway, those are some comments. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. So, Brother Sundari.
Yes. Recently, I heard someone recalling two examples from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life, illustrating what the spiritual master's affection for his disciples is. One was about some big preacher educated from a Brahmin family who left the mission, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur seemed totally unaffected by that. And then there was another about how he was anxious if just for a short time he couldn't see one illiterate disciple who was a gardener. Could Guru Maharaj say something about the affection, the anger, and the indifference of the spiritual master towards his disciples? Usually nobody wants to make their guru angry, but what to do if it happens, especially if one thinks it happened for not a good reason? And also, what can make our guru indifferent towards us and how to avoid it? Thank you.
Well, yeah, I think that in one sense, the guru is going to respond to the disciples largely in terms of how they respond to him or her, how they react. And so, you may get a reaction that's warranted, if you will. Of course, you may not understand yourself. That's another thing. So then, and expecting some other response, but that's kind of a general rule. But then again, of course, there's a human side to everything, and communications are not always clear, and that can impact how the guru may respond to someone. He may become upset with a disciple because he thinks that a disciple did a certain thing, only to find out it wasn't true. I've seen things like that happen, only to find that it wasn't a fact. So typically the guru is not like omniscient in this world and knows everything that everybody's doing at all times, and so forth. So those just human factors can play a role. But we should always be respectful to the guru. So if he's upset with us and there's not good reason for it, it's not our position to challenge him and criticize him or her or anything of the sort. We may just digest it and understand, well, Guru Maharaj was told that, so he really thinks like that about, but it's not true. And maybe you have an opportunity to explain the circumstances. And in most cases, that would be that opportunity would present itself. So Then again, of course, maybe the guru was upset with, the famous example of Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta was upset with him because during a lecture, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers was talking to him, trying to get his attention, and Bhaktisiddhanta noticed it and criticized Prabhupada, said, "Who do you think you are? Do you think you're capable to sit up here in the seat?" And Prabhupada wasn't doing anything wrong. He was trying to listen, and the other godbrother was the one who was distracted and tried to distract Prabhupada. But Bhaktisiddhanta criticized Prabhupada. So Prabhupada wasn't doing anything wrong. Bhaktisiddhanta criticized him. Prabhupada was so pleased that he thought that Guru Maharaj cares enough about me to publicly chastise me. He took the time. He cares about me. That's why he's, being so strict with me, even at the point of criticizing me for something I didn't do. To instruct me about the importance of paying attention, for example. So he didn't go to Bhaktisiddhanta and say, "Prabhupada, I want to tell you you were wrong about that. It wasn't me. It was the other guy who was talking." Prabhupada didn't do that at all. So we don't have to be like, on a campaign and make sure, we're understood necessarily. And I think that Prabhupada was well understood for, not responding in that way, not approaching his guru and so forth. And he personally celebrated the occasion. And again, he thought Guru Maharaj cares enough about me, to criticize me. Whereas, if the Guru becomes indifferent to us, then he thinks that, this person's incurable. What can I do? That's how, he withdraws. The better the Guru chastises us or praises us, one or the other. And the last thing we want is that he become indifferent. So why would he become indifferent again? Because he feels like, I've tried with this person, he doesn't understand, he doesn't listen, doesn't, whatever. Then he has to withdraw regretfully. But what can you do? So those are some thoughts on the matter. I don't know if I've covered all of your questions, but
Thank
the
you.
nuances. Another question. What else?
We have Rajavalabi.
Yes. Dear Maharaj, I wanted to ask if you could share something about your connection with my Param Gurudev, Sri Narayana Maharaj. Today we are celebrating the day of his divine appearance.
Narayana Swami Maharaj ki jai. I met Narayana Maharaj. I think, personally spoke with him after the disappearance of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. And at that time he was overseeing the Mathura Math of Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, where he'd stayed for many years. And but of course, prior to my meeting him, he had a affectionate relationship with Prabhupada. He performed the details of the ritual surrounding Prabhupada's acceptance of the sannyas order from his guru, Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. So they had a nice relationship. Prabhupada was like an uncle to Narayana Maharaj. There were many letters that of correspondence between them when Prabhupada came to America. And so there's a long history of that connection. When Prabhupada was preparing to pass from the world, one of my godbrothers, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, asked him if you should pass away, how will we perform the samadhi? Sam, I was massaging Prabhupada's feet, and he said, for that you can speak to Narayana Maharaj in Mathura. I think probably reflecting on the fact that Narayana Maharaj had performed the rituals for the sannyas, and he was, knowledgeable in that area. Not that he was knowledgeable in the area alone, but he remembered him for that, and he was close by also. And so they had an affectionate relationship, and he knew that Narayana Maharaj was qualified and knew the details for such, which is something Prabhupada never taught us. Then, of course, Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked, is there anyone else we can see in after your passing? And he said, for philosophy, my godbrother would be our Sridhar Maharaj of Navadvip. So he had a different relationship with the two. In relation to Prabhupada, in relation to Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada considered him Sridhar Maharaj's Siksha Guru. In his relationship with Narayana Maharaj considered him a Siksha Guru. So it was a blessing for us to have both of them introduced. It wasn't the first time that Prabhupada spoke about them, but it was last instruction. And they came onto the scene relative to how Prabhupada had responded. Narayana Maharaj came and performed the Samadhi ritual. And this was what was in November of 1977. And then in the following year, at the beginning, the first quarter of the year, there was an annual meeting of the GBC in Mayapur, and they all went to Sridhar Maharaj for Siksha on how to organize the succession and how to think about that, and so on and so forth. And so in a history, developed ISKCON's relationship with both, and unfortunately, ISKCON's rejection of both at a certain point. And I left shortly after the rejection of Sridhar Maharaj, and after the passing of Sridhar Maharaj, I came in touch with Narayana Maharaj. He had an affectionate relationship with me. I was in a kind of a special category, so to speak, in his mind, and in that there were a number of devotees from ISKCON who were coming under his shelter and so forth. And I had and started to do what I had done 10 years earlier, having departed from ISKCON, coming and serving under the shelter of Sridhar Maharaj, having an institution mission that, like he asked me to start, and initiating disciples and so forth. And so, of course, I knew many of the devotees who came under the shelter of Narayana Maharaj, and they wanted me to act like them in relation to Narayana Maharaj, but I had my own. He saw me in a different kind of category, so to speak. So he dealt with me a little differently. We had I would say, a friendly relationship. He was like a senior cousin, something like that, of mine. And of course, he was extremely learned and devoted, and he did so much for so many of Prabhupada's disciples to help them. In light of kind of a spiritual deficit or lacking that they were experiencing within ISKCON. When he came to Narayana Maharaj came to America for the very first time, at that time I had a temple, an ashram in Oregon, which is one of the northern states just above California on the West Coast, and it was the only temple in North America that invited him to come and stay. And so he came and stayed for 3 days there. We had some talks. So I had a number of private talks with him and correspondence with him. Always very generous to discussions with me. And I was very happy to see that it's unfortunate in one sense that devotees had to leave ISKCON, but that's what they felt. That was their conviction, and their faith in Narayana Maharaj mandated it, really. So I was happy to see. I remember when Shamarani left, and I was so proud of her. You stood up, you did the right thing, because they were right. They were right. They had accepted him as a Siksha Guru, and then ISKCON tried to litigate against that, and they weren't they wouldn't bend to the law, so to speak, the so-called law. They followed a higher law of their hearts and joined him. So I was very happy to see that. And you know, as a result, I had more interaction with the group. So yeah, and he was very you know, the group was able to publish many books and writings of his, translations of his, and so forth. They're a treasure for the devotees. And his emphasis on Madhurya Rasa and Madhurya Bhav was, of course, a feature of of his preaching, and it's an important point to make in the community. A number of the books do for the deep insights into that ideal, and we're fortunate therefore to have them circulating in the English language. So we owe great debt to Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj, very charming person, and he had great faith in Gaudiya Math and in ISKCON and you know, in this Bhakti Vinod Parivar. He was a strong supporter of core insights of Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that were not shared by by a number of lineages in the larger community of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where the teaching had been considerably misrepresented for some time. So he was a strong supporter of those sensibilities, philosophical sensibilities of called out by Bhakti Vinod and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur at a time when there was considerable misrepresentation of Gaudiya Siddhanta. So again, we're very fortunate to have. It's unfortunate circumstances, but the way that ISKCON dealt with it, but something good came of it. So, he was brought out, so to speak, by that, as Sri Maharaj was also after they rejected him, and then his books started coming out and so forth. So this is a it was a very I would say that Prabhupada represented an extraordinary tidal wave of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, obviously throughout the world. That's a chapter that's just that's a book within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the mission of Prabhupada, the campaign of Prabhupada. And I would put Narayana Maharaj's chapter in that campaign, in the aftermath of it, a chapter, an important, significant chapter. I hope to be in the book myself, but I'm happy to, and blessed to have known him and had opportunity to serve him at different times and to receive insights from him, feel his generosity. Bhaktivedanta Narayana Ki Jai. Bhaktivedanta Samiti Ki Jai.
Jai.
Okay, what else?
We have Shamadasi from the book.
We were discussing this purport in book club, and this question came to mind after we were discussing it. In your purport to Bhagavad Gita 439, you emphasize faith, Shraddha, as something that matures through lived realization and relational trust, whereas Srila Prabhupada often frames faith more as confident submission to revealed authority and the Guru Parampara. How do you understand the relationship between experiential realization and scriptural authority in the development of true knowledge, Gyan? And where do you see these two approaches converging?
Can you read it again? The last part?
How do you understand the relationship between experiential realization and scriptural authority in the development of true knowledge? And where do you see these two approaches converging?
There's there's paroksha gyan and aparoksha gyan. So gyan means knowledge. Paroksha means direct, indirect, and aparoksha means direct. They could also be termed, in more modern thinking, I would say primary and secondary knowledge, primary knowledge and secondary knowledge. And so paroksha gyan is secondary knowledge. That is the ways in which we try to communicate an understanding that we have. So scripture tries to communicate an understanding. The guru speaks, gives Siksha, tries to communicate an understanding. He gives a tool, like a mantra, to help communicate an understanding or a knowledge that is aparoksha gyan, his or her realization. So I have a realization, right? This is knowledge proper. And based on that knowledge, which is experiential and private, it's mine. I can't give you my feelings. I can communicate what they're like and how they feel and so forth. But I try to, the guru tries to communicate through these means, through scripture, through instruction, through imparting the mantra and so forth. And all of that is an example of indirect knowledge, or paroksha gyan. It's a secondary form of knowledge that we can objectify and talk about and so forth. But in the full sense of the term, knowledge is subjective. It's not objective. It is the understanding that arises in a conscious being, having received the tools for that to manifest. It's unmanifest within you. All knowledge. It lives in the subjective domain. And then again, there are tools from the objective world that we can use to bring them out. So let's take so there's one thing to have faith in the tools, faith in what the scripture says, and so forth. And to the extent that we do, that we actually do have faith, we apply that. And by the application, then this inner side of knowledge proper should arise, experiential understanding. And this is the ground now where real faith is manifesting. It's experiential. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, for example, used to compare the spiritual world to planets of faith. They're manifestations of faith. They're part of the experience, right? Now they can be talked about, scripture written about, and so on and so forth. But they exist in the realm of faith proper, the realm of knowledge proper, bhakti proper. So and bhakti is a kind of knowledge, gyan vishesh. It's a type of knowledge. It's a type of knowing, right? And with that knowing, then all doubts are cleared. Just as like there are planets of faith. Well, this is a planet of doubt. It's ruled at best, this world, by intelligence, which is the power of discrimination, by which you doubt and you test and so on and so forth, right? So scripture tries to, and the guru tries to capture our intelligence, right? And direct it, and through it direct ourselves in a certain way. It'll purify, spiritualize the intellect, and be a catalyst for the awakening of actual knowledge. So let's take, it's said that the Babas of the spiritual world, the Rasas, they come to this world through the descent of devotees, like the descent of the Ganges. So, okay, you know, let's say through Guru Parampara. It's kind of a metaphor, really, but anyway. But then the devotees and the Guru Parampara, they try to communicate that, right? They're going to share that through these tools. So their sadhu sangha, it is the seed. Jiva Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in his commentary that sadhu sangha is the seed of the bhava, the seed. Sadhu sangha is an anga of sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is what's given to us. That's not what I'm going to give you, bhava. It can't be given. It's not an object. I think I said this last, I can tell you that 2 and 2 is 4. I can take 2 things here and 2 things there and put them together, and I can check, see, this is 4. But the knowledge, that's paroksha gyan, indirect knowledge. The actual knowledge of it is something, the understanding of it is something that is entirely internal to you. There's a tool which I can help to cause it, to manifest. So in this way, we can understand that bhakti, which is as Jiva Goswami describes it himself in Priti Sandarbha, it's a type of knowledge. It means a state of consciousness. It can't be transferred from one person to another. It's part of our own relational knowledge. It's a dimension of the jiva's dhamma bhuta gyan. It's attribute of inherent attribute of knowledge, and it will manifest within by the right catalyst, and the catalyst is sadhana bhakti, sadhu sangha, which is a form and so forth. So I don't know how well I'm answering your question, but there's of course interesting topics. But anyway, so the scripture says we should follow the guru, we should do this, we should do that, and there's a line of authority from where we can get real knowledge, and so we believe that. Let's say it's some good argument. We believe that. And if you apply that belief, then you get faith. There's some faith in belief, but belief is itself an intellectual, affair. You've deliberated on it, and you believe it. So in one sense, there's a difference between belief and faith. But belief leads to faith if it's properly, if you apply yourself. If it makes sense. Okay, I believe it. It makes sense. So now, if I really believed it, I have to act accordingly. Otherwise, I'll be a hypocrite. So let me act accordingly. And by acting accordingly, through like a trans-rational, activity, then knowledge proper and the experiential faith arises within. Does that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, we're out of time now. So you've asked some good questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all. And I'll be here next week too. So look forward to seeing you then. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Hi.
Changa pranams, Haribo.
Hari.
Thank you, everyone. And Dhruv Agarwal, your question will be first next Sunday. And have a nice week, everyone. Haribol.